Hi there, it's Carl Irwin, the Con Magician. I've got something interesting to share with you. I want to try something very quickly. I just have you think about, I don't know, a color, black or red. Black or red, and you can name whatever you want. Let's say you name black. Black is your color. And name a suit. Among the black, you've got spades and clubs. What do you want, spades or clubs? Spades. Do you want number cards or picture cards? Numbers or pictures? You've got numbers, ace through 10, pictures, jack, queen, king. 9. So 9 of spades, right? 9 of spades is what we have right there. So picture card or number card 9 and spade. I just want to be clear that you didn't say, you know, it's 9, it's not 4, 3, or 2, or anything like that, right? It's 9. Take a look here at the deck. I just want to show something. If you look at the bottom, we don't have the 9 of spades. Likewise at the top, not the 9 of spades, right? It's somewhere in the middle. Could you go ahead and cut approximately half of the deck? Right there, good. Now I just want to be clear that you did what you wanted. You picked a color. You could have changed your mind, but you picked black. You picked spades. You picked a number card, which was the 9 of spades. And then you cut the deck. And you cut right there. Deck was shuffled ahead. I didn't do anything. You did everything. And I had no control over it. And yet somehow you cut to the 9 of spades. Okay, so this is a sort of a rehash of things that we've discussed before, but I wanted to bring up a point related to some of the discussions I've had regarding calculation, kind of on-the-spot calculation. And this isn't something I necessarily do, but it's something I thought about. And that is, if you're dealing with a stacked deck that isn't necessarily a mem deck, but it might be a tetradistic type stack, which I talk about in my ebook Random, and I've referenced on the channel in a number of videos just after Christmas. If you need to do some calculation to understand location, it can be a little difficult, even if there's simple calculation, to do it in the head. There's a tendency I find, at least when I perform, and you may find the same thing, that you feel the need to fill the space. Whenever decisions are being made, it's uncomfortable to have silence or to have a moment where you can think. Now, the traditional way to deal with this is to ask a question, which then solicits a response. And the more vague the question is, the more time you get really to process. And the truth is you're not interested in the answer that they give you. You're just interested in the time that it creates for them to think and to respond. And a good question is, a very common one is, any reason why you thought of that? Right? Is there any reason why you thought of that card? Any reason why you named that card? And you ask the question, and that gives them a moment to respond, but it gives you a moment to not listen at all, but to think about calculation if you need to, or to think about position or whatever it is you need to be ahead in the intellectual part of the procedure. One thought that occurred to me was you could, in some circumstances, find a way to simply think out loud, to actually think through things out loud. So in this example, and I already knew what it was, but I wanted to take a moment to demonstrate. It was black, it was spades, it was 9, number card, 9 of spades. What I did is, once the card was named, I then asked a question, but the question was me thinking out loud. I know in my stack that the 9, it's a tetradistic cyclical stack, that the 9s in all 4 banks is going to be at the 5th position. So I say the 9 of spades, and then I replied with something that may not have made any clear sense, and that's actually perfect. I said not 4, 3, or 2, but a 9, right? And it sounds like I'm naming random numbers as if to say, well, you could have picked these other things. But what I'm actually doing is calculating. I'm actually calculating to the position that it's actually at. If it's in the first bank and I'm dealing with an offset of 3, something we've talked about in the past, I don't want to go over it again other than to say that I've offset 3 cards from the very first bank such that the second bank is actually in numerical position starting at 11 through 23, like the teens through 23 as if it's 1 through 13, which means that the first bank, if I'm doing a calculation, the cards at their numerical position 1 through 13 are actually -3. So I need to subtract 3. The next bank after the second bank, after the teens into 23, would actually be +3. So that would be 21 through 33, but I have to add 3 to that number to find the actual location. And then the last bank should be +6, but it's actually -4, starting at 41. So I think in the 40s, 41 to 53, which is not a real number in the deck, but remember, I'm subtracting. I think 41 and up, and I subtract 4 to get to the actual spot. And all I need to do is remember what suits are in what bank and know the sequential order of the 13 cards in the cycle. But because there's a little bit of calculation, either -3, nothing, +3, or -4 from a particular starting point, I have to think about that -3, the +3, or the -4. So in doing so, I found ways to do this just kind of again, I don't do this, but it's an idea there for you. For those of you that have a hard time with calculation, you really can think out loud in a circumstance like this. And you might be able to find ways in which this can work even with your own stack. And might even be with a mem deck like Mnemonica, which doesn't necessarily have a cycle, but you may need to do some calculation, in which case you can just name numbers as if you're talking values, but I'm actually talking positions, right? So here I know that it should be at 5, but I need to subtract 3, which shouldn't be hard to do. But again, I want to do it quickly and efficiently without being distracted. So I just do it in the open. 9, not like 4, 3, or 2 or anything like that, but 9, right? So what I've done is I've actually done the subtraction right there. Now the revelation isn't going to be off of 2, 1 and then 2, there it is. My revelation actually was entirely different. Because it's so close to the top, I pivot to a more opportune way to reveal the card, which isn't by saying pigeonholing them into the second position in the deck or something like that for any card at any number, but do something more advantageous. You can see the card, hopefully it's not at the bottom. No, it's not at the top, right? And I'm just displacing the top card when I put it back on the bottom. And now it's a shuffled deck, verified that I don't have control. Even though I touched it, I really haven't. I really haven't done anything with it, and I can keep that claim. They can cut the cards. They find their own card through a crisscross force or whatever. I could do some other kind of force where I have them arrive there. I could, knowing that it's in the second, I could cull it and do a cull force, right? Even if I get it to the very top, I could cull force like that. But I could have cull forced directly. I can spread, and then I can just, this doesn't have to look clean because there's no expectation of what's going on. I take the first card, the second card, and cull it back beyond, slip the next card over, and then just spread clean. Now, for magicians who are thinking like magicians, this would be a very dirty way to cull. But in reality, you could do something like that. It would work very well. So anyway, this idea of thinking out loud for calculation. If I need to add 3, I can add 3. Even if I do this number picture thing, and let's say it ends up being a 10, which in my stack is actually at the 10's position. This is an inverse stack, is the one that we're using right now. Again, it's not abundantly clear that things are in an order, but they are in a pretty solid order for my sake. But for the spectator, this is all quite shuffled, right, by suit and by value. But let's say it's a 10, which is at 10, and let's say I'm in a later bank, or maybe the third bank, and I need to add 3 to that. Okay, so in that case, it's a 10 of clubs. And I need to go up 3. I need to go 11, 12, and 13. I could say, 11, 12, and 13. I might say 10, not a picture card like a jack, queen, or king, right? Now, in my mind, that's 11, 12, and 13. But I can just go back to that question about picture cards and name other picture cards rather than the number card that they named. Or if it's a 9 and I have to go up, I could say 9, not 10, or not a jack or a queen, but you want a 9, right? It really doesn't matter what you say, but you can think out loud rather than think inside, and just find ways to externalize the code that would be going on internally in order to confidently do your calculations and verify outside of your mind that your calculations are right. I don't know. In terms of music, as a music teacher, It's like tapping your foot to the music, right? And I teach young people this as a music teacher, but as a professional, I maintain this is true too. You want to externalize the pulse as you are performing. I know there's a conductor there if you're playing in an ensemble, and you're obviously taking your cue from the director, from the conductor that's up there, in terms of where the pulse is at, what kinds of expectations there are in terms of musicality, not just what's written in the page, but what they're asking for in terms of dynamics and articulation and style and that kind of stuff. But I'm also externalizing the beat. I am tapping my toe in my shoe, or I'm feeling the pulse. I'm generating it. As a percussionist, they'll often even speak things out loud to themselves or do things physically that will help to maintain where the pulse is at. Or in terms of phrasing, string players, play a string instrument. They don't need to breathe to play their instrument. They need to breathe to survive, but if they don't put air into their instrument, they're not playing wind instruments. Nonetheless, string players will, if they're very good, they will actually breathe on the phrases. Pianists do the same things too. Keyboard players, they'll actually breathe on the phrase, where a wind player, or actually where a singer is really where it comes from, where a singer might take a breath on the phrase to give it musicality and phrase logic, right? An externalization of inward thinking. And I posit that you could really find ways to do this too if you're very uncomfortable with internal calculations. Find a way, a systematic way to externalize what it is you're trying to accomplish, and that can boost your confidence and the speed and accuracy at which you do mental calculations. So there's an idea for you to consider. So thinking out loud. Good luck with that. Happy magicking.